It is clearly an indisputable scientific fact that biological males have a superior power and stamina and lung power and all these other things to biological females, because if they didn't, we would never separate the sexes in sport. The Olympics would be gender neutral. And they're not for a reason. Women wouldn't win anything. So when I hear you try and justify it or say that there's a scientific, and maybe there's not, maybe I'm misquoting you here, but there's some kind of scientific reason why it's fine, I'm like, hang on, Neil, you're Mr. Reality Check. You're Mr. Cold Hard Fact. Surely you can see that this is wrong without it actually having to be transphobic to say that.
In today's video, Neil deGrasse Tyson engages in a compelling exchange with Piers Morgan over the topic of transgender athletes in women's sports. The discussion is intense, with Neil presenting scientific facts, logical reasoning, and a clear perspective, avoiding any unnecessary embellishments. Rather than engaging with the arguments objectively, Piers adopts a combative stance, frequently interrupting and attempting to reframe Neil's words to fit a debate-style confrontation. His approach resembles a political talk show format where he strives to create impactful gotcha moments. However, these tactics ultimately fall flat. What follows is an impressive display of composed, well-informed rebuttals from Neil deGrasse Tyson. His ability to articulate his points with clarity and reason transforms the debate into an insightful discussion. Prepare for an engaging analysis, as Neil methodically addresses each challenge presented, demonstrating a masterclass in rational discourse.
Well, so you have me here live on your show. We don't have to comment on other shows. So let's just have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I did my own study of the relative speed of men relative to women in Olympic sports, the world records, from the 100 meters to the 200 meters, the 400, right on up to the marathon. And what I noticed is in every event, on average, men were 10% faster than women, 10% faster. And in events that require strength, that percent was even higher. I forgot what my exact number, it might have been 50% stronger, okay? So across the board, that is the case. So that's not, there's no dispute there. That's
right.
Just objective truth. So now we have to ask, why do we watch sports at all, okay? And at Friday Night Lights, that's in the United States, that's high school football. Saturday, it's college football. Sunday, it's the NFL. Do you realize, of course, that the worst team ever in the NFL could wipe its ass with the best team ever in college? Why? Because every single player in the NFL was the best person in their college. And so there's no contest between these zones of athletic engagement. But we still like watching college. We don't watch college and say, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles could whip their ass, so let's not watch it. No, we like the equality of the contest and not knowing who would win. That's what makes sports fun. Okay, so if there's a wave of trans women who dominate the sport against other women, all those sports will become less interesting based on how we all watch sports. Even the Super Bowl here in the United States, if it's a blowout by halftime, nobody watches the second half.
Right.
We watch it for the equality of the contest. Okay, so
sounds like you agree
all
with
I'm
me
saying
then.
is, like you said, wait, I'm almost done. So what I see is sports is on the frontier of how to handle this frontier of people who are trans. It's on the frontier of how to resolve that. And I'm making this up now. Imagine the future of sports does not distinguish sex. It distinguishes and sorts people by hormone ratios. I'm making this up, but imagine that if that were the case. That would be interesting. You get a hormone test, you're in this range, and then you compete against other people with the same range of hormones.
That's ridiculous.
That's
Neil, that is ridiculous.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why it's not ridiculous.
You're going to give every single person in
wrestle.
sport a hormone test.
Piers begins by stating a well-known fact. Biological males typically possess greater strength, speed, and endurance than biological females. This point isn't contested, not even by Neil. However, rather than dwelling on this distinction, Neil shifts the focus to a broader question. How can sports remain fair and inclusive in an evolving society? His proposal? Move beyond rigid gender divisions and consider an alternative, categorizing athletes based on hormone levels. It may seem unconventional at first, but it's worth considering. Sports already classify competitors by age, weight, and skill level, so why not hormone levels as well? The goal isn't to undermine fairness, but to redefine it in a way that aligns with modern understanding. And in reality, this isn't just a radical concept. It could be a practical solution.
Hold on. I used to wrestle. And wrestling, there are people who weigh, sorry, am I using pounds here, 125 pounds, right on up to 240 pounds. They don't wrestle each other. The entire sport separates people so that the contest is interesting.
Yeah.
And so the people of the same weight wrestle each other, and that is the contest.
But if Floyd Mayweather...
I don't know if that's how it will land.
Hang on, Neil. If Floyd Mayweather fought a woman boxer, a female woman boxer, who was the same weight division, he would annihilate her. That's why we don't let it happen. And in fact, in the Paris Olympics, the winner of one of the women's boxing competitions, one of the
Piers,
females
that's not
who
what I was
took her
talking
on.
about.
But yeah, but my point is that I just think that, if you don't mind me saying, I say this respectfully because I love you, but it just seems to me like you've dug yourself into a slight hole on this issue, and you're trying to get out of it. And now you're suggesting slightly mad theories, whereas the science to me is obvious. You've already given the best argument I've heard for why we separate the sexes.
Hold on. You misquoted me in this very interview. What I said was the idea of creating categories within a sport, splitting them in the example I gave, which I just made it up, like hormone ratios, is not fundamentally weird compared to dividing wrestlers by weight.
No, it is.
The only reason why you do this is to make an interesting contest.
No, Neil, you're wrong.
And so you said Floyd Mayweather fight. Hold on.
You're
wrong.
Said
Floyd Mayweather.
You're not allowing for the superior male biology when it comes to lung capacity, stamina, to body mass, to muscle mass, all those things. If you just take one criteria of hormones, you're not allowing all that. I'll give an example. Caitlyn Jenner, who obviously... hang on. I'm going to finish my point. Let me finish my point. Caitlyn Jenner was an Olympic male decathlon gold medal winner. Caitlyn is a big golf fan. And when she started playing golf after she transitioned, she was allowed to play off the women's tees, which are 50 yards further than the men's tees. And she quickly realised that she was still smashing it 300 yards down, and obviously was then beating all the women that she played. So she now plays back off the male tees because her biology is that of a man. And I feel that was the most honest way to deal with it. I also feel that if you want to have a separate category, have a trans category. Or have trans women compete against men, which is their biology. Isn't that the scientific way to resolve this?
I don't have a solution. What I started this section of the conversation by saying that how you handle trans athletes is a frontier in sports that does not yet have a full solution. And I made up an example, like maybe you could divide people by hormones. I don't know if that would work physiologically, but at the end of the day, we watch sporting events because they are competitively interesting. And so something's going to have to get resolved there, and I don't have that solution.
I do. I do.
You have a
trans category, or you have the trans women compete against biological men, which is what they are.
Piers then brings up Caitlyn Jenner, arguing that her impressive golf performance proves that biology is the ultimate factor in sports. From this, he quickly concludes that trans women should simply compete with men. However, this reasoning is overly simplistic. Not every transgender athlete is a former Olympian with elite training. Using Caitlyn Jenner as the standard for all trans athletes is a flawed comparison. Meanwhile, Neil doesn't claim to have all the answers. He acknowledges the complexity of the issue and the lack of easy solutions. But is Piers interested in that level of nuance? Not really. His focus seems to be on securing a viral moment where he dominates the debate. The problem? That moment never actually happens.
And I completely respect trans rights.
That may be, that may be how it settles, but I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's a frontier without a current solution that everybody agrees to. That's all I'm telling you. And I started this by affirming, yes, men are faster and stronger than the average man is stronger and faster too. World-class men are faster and stronger than world-class women. Obviously, there's huge overlap when you come down the rest of the distribution.
The truth is,
But
if you had a gender-neutral Olympics, how many women, biological female women, would win gold medals if it was open to men and women? The answer is literally like they might win one or two.
You know, I'm trying to stay above. You're creating this world that makes great clickbait.
No, I'm not. Honestly, I'm not.
People to see commented on.
No. I honestly,
yes,
I'm throwing back at you the thing you throw back at other people, which is science. I'm telling you that it's the scientific reality, unless you say otherwise, and I don't think you do, because you've already explained that men have a superior speed and power.
I'm not saying otherwise. I started this.
The science is clear to me.
I started this by saying it.
But the science is clear, isn't it?
And I'm saying the solution isn't clear, even if the science is. And so that's all. We can debate what could work. I think the world has to figure it out, and maybe they'll figure it out one day. And maybe it is hormone ratios. I don't know. But if it is hormone ratios and we don't compete sexes, we compete by hormones, that's a whole other interesting future of athletics. By the way, every Olympics, I pause and think to myself, which of these events can and should not be separated by sex?
Which
there
ones?
are some already that are
ones?
the case. And the equestrian. The equestrian does not separate men from women.
Equestrian and shooting, I think, also is another one where if they're sitting and shooting, there's no
that
reason.
I didn't know. Yeah. So I just figured there's some that would be the case. And we can start there and just work our way up. So yeah, it's a frontier. People are thinking about it. Top people are thinking about it. And I'm not going to be the one who will have that solution.
Fair enough.
But at the end, I know when you're watching sports, you want to watch people who have equivalent talent compete.
Once again, Piers completely misses the point. Instead of engaging with Neil's argument, he repeats the same claim, that if the Olympics were gender neutral, women wouldn't win. But let's be clear, no one is suggesting eliminating all categories and turning sports into a single open competition. Neil's point is that it's time to reconsider how fairness in sports is structured in a world that continues to evolve. Trans athletes exist, regardless of personal opinions, and the current system isn't addressing the challenges effectively. However, rather than having a meaningful discussion, Piers continues to recycle the same arguments, refusing to acknowledge the complexity of the issue. This is a nuanced topic that requires thoughtful dialogue, not rehearsed soundbites.